Okay, guys, hello. So we are in true accept me as I am territory. I am glistening and sweaty from the garden, but this is when I had time to sit down and do a very short video on starting to communicate with plants and how to communicate with plants and how to start doing that and receive information from them. I don't intend for this to be a very long video because I don't have a lot of time. But yeah, full garden after gardening all day glory. Let's get started. This video is, my name is Sarah Petruno, first of all. Welcome if you're new here. I am a shamanic practitioner. I have been practicing shamanism for 9 years, and that includes communicating with all manner of spiritual beings, including plants. And the reason that this video and this idea for this video came about is because earlier today I was picking some peonies in my yard, and as I was picking them for their flower petals to put into soaps that I'm going to be making, I got a message or a download from them that they wanted to be made into a flower essence. And I shared about this on Instagram, and some people asked me, like, how do you do that? How do you start receiving messages from plants? And I realized that it's not obvious, and I kind of wanted to share my procedure and just some general thoughts about it so that you can start communicating with plants if that's something that you want to do. Okay, so I started my intuitive training and learning to communicate with spirit in general via communicating and working with trees. So that's kind of where I started with all of this. Now, the first thing I want to say is that plants are not required to communicate with us. They are sentient sovereign beings, which means that they are not required to just give us their wisdom or plant information or insights or messages. Some plants will more readily be wanting to communicate with you, be more readily wanting to give information. Some require you to build trust with them for a longer period of time. I know there are other plant communicators who talk about this and how you just have to go and sit next to the plant for like a long time before the plant has that trust with you to want to trust you with its information and medicine. Some plants, it can take a long time. The peonies that I was working with and starting to pick for their flowers for soaps, when they asked about being made into a flower essence, I have been working with them for 3 years, for 3 seasons. This is the 3rd season working with them, and just now they start to communicate with me, and I visit them all the time and talk to them and admire them, and just now, 3 years later, did they communicate with me that they wanted to be made into an essence. So it can take some time to build up the trust with a plant. So if you're trying to communicate with a plant, you're not getting anything back from them, it could just be that you need to build more trust with them and visit them and sit with them, and just work with building up a trust relationship with them like you would with a human person. What else? When you are wanting to work with a plant, generally you will feel pulled to or called to the plant that wants to work with you, whether or not they're ready to communicate with you. And when you're first approaching, what I like to do is I introduce myself, I say who I am, and like kind of my intentions of like working with them and introducing myself. Like when I approach a tree for the first time, I will introduce myself, say hello. You don't have to do this out loud. You can do this all within your head telepathically, and communicating through your intuitive senses. And you just visit with them and you sit with them and build that relationship. And over time, when the plant is ready to communicate with you, what may happen is they will start to give you messages. And the way that you receive those messages depends on what your intuitive abilities are, what your strongest intuitive senses are. And if you don't know about that, you can research that, or I have a class about that kind of goes over intuitive and spirit communication 101 that I'll link below. But the way that plants communicate with me and trees communicate with me primarily is via clairaudience, which means I hear the messages, or claircognizance, which means they just kind of pop into my head. Some people the plants will communicate with them via a clairsentience, a feeling in their body. Other people, maybe the plants will give you images or visions, which is clairvoyance. But the way that works for me is if I'm near a plant that I've built a relationship with and they want to communicate with me, messages will just kind of drop in as I'm near them, like downloads. And what it sounds like is it's calm, and it's usually some way that they want you to work with their medicine and work with them, or it's guidance in something that you've needed guidance about. It's usually calming, it's usually soothing, it's never mean, it's never anxiety filled with anxiety or fear, it's usually like reassuring and calming, or some way that they want you to work with their medicine. Is how it comes in, and it can drop in as like a pops into your head, or it can come as like a voice that you hear in also inside your mind usually. And that's pretty much how. And so if you're wanting to communicate with plants, I recommend that you approach, introduce yourself, state your intentions, and then visit and sit with and build that trust relationship with them. And over time, eventually, the plant will start to communicate with you. You'll get ideas of how to work with them, of things to make with their medicine, of insights from them, like what types of things they can help with, help you with, help other people with, some messages that they want to share. And all the way that it works is you're sitting next to them or near them, and then these things start to come in intuitively. So that's pretty much how I got started. Is you choose a plant, or a plant is calling to you. Plant medicine works that way, where it calls to you. And this is more commonly like known or talked about with like ayahuasca, for example, where like she calls to you, where like you just feel kind of drawn to it. Or you just really like that plant. Ayahuasca is not that way, but it's kind of pulls you in. Where ayahuasca kind of pulls you to it, draws you to it. But other plants are the same way, where they just kind of like pull you, and you're like, you really like them, you're admiring them, you want to be near them, you just like that, you just feel an affinity. That's a sign that that plant is calling you, wants to work with you. That doesn't mean they will immediately communicate with you, and they may want you to build that trust relationship with them first. But over time, if you are consistent and patient, then they will start to communicate with you. And like I said, the way that it works for me is it just kind of drops in like a message, or a download, or an idea that pops into my mind when I'm near them. So that's pretty much it. I hope that was helpful for you guys and helped kind of give you a general idea. It's a lot of this just takes a lot of practice and just a lot of like consistency with practicing your intuitive gifts, and practicing and being consistent with building that relationship with whichever plant or tree spirit that you're wanting to communicate with. And the biggest thing to remember is that they are sovereign sentient beings, and they are not required to do anything for you. And if you want to work with them, that usually requires like you to build a relationship with that individual. You're tending to them, you're visiting them, you're talking to them, you're communicating with them, you're putting forth the effort in the relationship. All right, I hope that helps. Bye, guys.